tattoo shop. So, hello, welcome to Madhouse Tattoo in Stanstead, Abbott, Hertfordshire. It's a tattoo shop I happen to own, which is lucky, otherwise we'd be done for breaking and entering and other bad jokes. What I want to do today is I want to talk to people who are tattooed, have been tattooed, and their reasons for it. I want to talk to some mental health industry professionals about how they see tattooing as part of a recovery process, or even just a process to make sure that they have some way of coping. A lot of my customers over the last 20 years have come in to talk to me about their lives, about what they do, about who they are. And by doing that, they get some kind of relief with the pain they're going through, the picture they end up with, but also the conversations they have with the tattooists and with me. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to introduce Nicky, who is sat opposite me. Nicky is somebody who has been a customer of ours since we started 12 years ago. And I know that she has a story. Hello, Nicky.
Hi.
Now, you sent me a message before we started all this, and you said the reason why you started getting tattooed. Can you remember what that was? What's the reasoning behind the beginning of your tattoo journey?
The beginning was, I was in my early 30s, so I might be considered fairly old to start getting tattooed. I went through quite a lot of bullying from a young age, coercive control, relationship, and I got to the point where I hated the way I looked. And it was a way to deface my body in a pretty way. Deface,
that's a weird word to use. Do you mean... Right, so did you see it as defacing yourself because inside you didn't like the way you looked? So did you see that as a way of changing the way you looked or ruining more the way you looked? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, so at the time it didn't occur to me that was the reason I was doing it. It's something I was aware of later on why I'd started. I thought it would improve by having something pretty put on me, I thought it would improve how I felt about myself in the mirror. Okay.
Was that the conscious decision, because that's quite a large decision to take in your 30s, right? Yeah. I'm now going to get tattooed. So I can relate in a way. My first tattoo is a huge cross on my arm. I had that when I was 18. Always been the little fat kid, or actually the big fat kid. Always had people suggesting maybe that my size controlled who I was and all of that. So then I thought, okay, I can get tattooed, I can make myself look better. Instead of looking at the real problems, I thought I could mask what was going on. So that thought process that you first had was to put something pretty on you to make you pretty.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so where are you at now with this process? Now you've been tattooed a lot. You have full coverage on a lot of you. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about your tattoos now?
They're my life story. They're everything that I've survived or come through, everything I've achieved. Some are commemorative, some are, special moments in my life. I found a love of certain types of sport and I've got them tattooed on me. So now they're a life story. And I'm happy to show them off. I used to have them all very hidden away in hidden areas. Mm-hmm. And now, it's my journey. So.
What do you think has changed for you to perceive your body and your tattoos in a completely different way to when you started? What's changed for you now?
I've learnt to be happy with who I am, and I can make the changes that I need to from within rather than on the outside.
Okay.
And I think as you get older, you become more comfortable with who you are. And you learn how to make the changes if you're not comfortable with who you are. Whereas when you're younger, there's not really the guidance there to help you with that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you think now I'm older than you, but now that you've reached that age where you've kind of plateaued, you're looking at the causes of what made you upset and what made you have, a turbulent time. Do you think that you'll stop getting tattooed now?
No.
You see, that's the same as me.
No.
I've got a sodding great neck tattoo that Talen, who works here, did for me, which is beautiful, but it's really painful. And I know how painful that is, right? But yet I still go through it all. I still come and get more. So what's the reasoning for you now getting tattooed when, okay, I'm not saying that all of our problems just vanish. And I'm not saying that we're not able to come to terms with things and deal with them, but you no longer have the same onus, do you, on tattooing as a way of escape?
No. Like for example, my latest tattoo, which I had done here, was to commemorate the fact I'm getting married soon. So good things happen, and I want to put them on my body, but also I don't feel the pain that I used to.
Yeah.
So this neck one, I was like nodding off. I don't feel the
annoying.
same pain.
That's annoying. I was crying like a small child through most of it, as Talen will have felt. The only thing, you used to feel pain a lot more than you do now.
Yeah. I don't know if that's just age or I've become more calm. But I used to... When I started getting tattoos, I realised that the pain was actually making me feel better. So I never really understood self-harming, but I wonder if it was a form of that to start with.
Could be.
But now I'm a lot calmer and happier in life. Perhaps I just don't feel the pain, and I can zone out and get my breathing under control. But I used to come in here and I was going the whole way through it.
Some damn strange noises, quite frankly. I think when you're inside of a situation, sometimes you just need a respite. Sometimes you just need to feel something else. I mean, it's well documented. I used to have a problem with drugs and all of that. Now, the reason that I took a lot of drugs is so I didn't have to focus on the bullshit that was around me and all the things I couldn't deal with. So I just got out of my face. And, obviously that made me a marvellously better human being. Yeah, of course it did. But, the reason for that was escapism. The reason for my tattooing as well is, I'm covered, right, but I do own a tattoo shop, but it kind of goes with the territory. But what I'm thinking is that as I get older, I'm enamoured with the fact that I can look at my palms and they've got tattoos on them. I'm enamoured with the fact that I can have somebody, as good as Mickey, as good as Talen, they will tattoo me and I can keep them forever. And, we're going to talk to other people who have different types of tattoos and who, have full-on coverage. But that escapism I no longer need. I'm wondering, though, do I still need it, but I've managed to justify it in a different way? Do you think there's any part of you that still wants to hide behind your tattoo?
There must be, I think. Yeah. There's not many... I'm 47. There's not many women my age who are covered as much as me, from what I've seen. And I think I've embraced the fact that maybe I'm a bit different from other women my age. And I think that's where the big switch was in me, was that instead of trying to fit in, I've continued to get more tattoos that were more visible because I was embracing being a bit different. Yeah. And that was quite a pivotal time in my adult life.
So you went from trying to conform to something that you weren't, to realising you didn't have to? Yeah. Is that where we're going? So now... Yeah. The thing is, when you're in a situation that you think is untenable, when you're younger and everything's on top of you, you think you're not going to come out of it. Yeah. Now we're older, whatever experience that we have, whatever hits us, normally our thinking isn't we're never going to come out of this. Our thinking is there'll be a way through, we'll find a way. I don't use tattooing as a crutch now, but I do still enjoy the process. And I think when I did use it as a crutch, it just took over to the point where now, when I had something to celebrate, so, Perfect Distortion was the band that did the thing, there's their logo on my arm. And it became something that I could then champion. So you've done, you do an awful lot of sport, an awful lot of running, and you've got tattoos that show that. Yeah. Yeah, so is it a celebration of what you're doing now instead of something you want to hide behind?
Yeah, remember the first triathlon I ever did, when I crossed that finish line, I thought I couldn't do it. I probably came last and I cried, but I thought I need to put that on my body because it's an achievement that I'm proud of. Yeah. But I didn't get that, what's the word, sort of well done from any friends or family. Right. So I thought I need to provide that reassurance that I've done well for myself. Yep. And put it on my body, so I don't need that reassurance from other people around me.
So that celebration is self-centered is the wrong words, but so it comes from you. Yeah. To congratulate yourself, because however close we are to people and whatever relationships we have, at the end of the day, if we're not at peace with ourselves about what we're doing, or congratulatory, flipping it, then we can't expect others to congratulate us for the same levels of things we do, because they don't know what our perspective is. So now, instead of it being a negative, it's very much a positive thing.
Yeah.
Why did you pick tattooing at the beginning to cover up? I mean, it's obvious, but you're literally covering your body. But then why not just cover up with more clothes or wear a different hat? Why did you go to the extreme of having your body modified?
Because I wanted to look okay without clothes on.
Okay.
I wanted to be, I was quite good at covering myself with clothes, and I spent a lot of money on clothes and decided that I preferred tattoos.
Right, well,
So-
that's fine.
So,
Residual self-image is, if you've seen The Matrix, right? Residual self-image is when you look in the mirror, I am often surprised by the way I look, because that's not how I look in my head. So when you have tattoos, as a way of deflection, look at those tattoos rather than myself. Because I'm still not happy with who I am, what I am, and I don't think I ever will be. I think that's an ongoing search throughout the whole of your life. So now, when you look at yourself and you see the congratulations, you see your self-congratulatory tattoos, but also your life tattoos. You've got a Queen tattoo, because you love Freddie Mercury and you love Queen, and so it's all about self-congratulation, but in a positive way. It's all about the things you love now, and it's not about hiding.
yeah, and it's permanent. Clothes aren't permanent.
No.
And I think I wanted to be confident in be able to look at myself in the mirror when I was feeling a bit low and think, oh yeah, I've achieved that, oh I've done that, and it boosts my mood if I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
Rather than thinking, oh, I've got to put clothes and makeup on and stuff like that to feel good. It's like a constant reminder.
That's great. So the beautiful thing is that something that was so negative and also, almost self-destructive has now become something that's celebratory and positive for you. And that also shows your journey from being a negative human being inwardly to somebody who can now deal with your life and what's happening. So that's a beautiful example of somebody who has used tattooing both negatively and positively, which has kind of proved the whole reason for this show. So we might as well all go home now. So that's great. Nicky, thank you so much for doing this. If there's anything to be learned, or you want to say anything, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, if there was one thing that you could say to people who are thinking about tattooing instead of harming themselves or judging themselves or anything, what would you say to them?
I would say, I know someone else very special to me who has used piercings to help with this instead of self-harming, and it's definitely a better way of getting through bad times, and it gives you something. It's almost like you can look back on your life and say, yeah, I got through that, I survived that, and I have something attractive on me that makes me feel good about what I went through. And I think it makes you a stronger person when you going through something like that. So yeah, try and get a tattoo, get a piercing,
find something positive.
Find something positive in that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We're done. Right. When you find a way to deal with a situation and you find something that can be a positive in a negative world, even if it isn't a true positive, even if it isn't something that is giving you real, real cleansing, it isn't giving you real healing, but what it is giving you is a way to cope, I think that's valid. But also, when you get through the other side and you continue to do those same things, I think that's an amazing way to do things. Right, we are going to talk to, where's Dan? Come over, Dan. He'll be all right. Right, Dan Hicks.
Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. Right, you have gone through the gamut of everything, right?
Yeah.
In a good way and a bad way.
Sure.
Okay, so tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Dan Hicks. I've been a musician, 20-something years, tour musician. I've worked in education and mental health. I am the first patch in the UK for a charity organisation called Bikers Against Child Abuse, which has been a 10-year journey this May.
You brought that here,
yes,
right?
Yeah, I'm one of the UK founding members. So it started in America mid-90s, 94, 95, and 10 years ago I started the journey of bringing it over to the UK.
Okay, can I say something? Just stand up and go, Sammy. You've got to remember, we're in a tattoo shop with lots of people around us, things are going to happen. So, when I've been describing you as a mental health professional,
sure.
What do you do right now?
I do a mixture of things within music industry, but also as a mental health professional. I worked in education and mental health throughout the pandemic. Oh, yeah. I was a senior pastoral leader for a senior school in charge of 627 kids' mental health. Wow. So that's been kind of that journey.
That's huge.
And after the pandemic as well.
Yeah.
And then part of my journey within mental health is taking. You got mental health first aid. And I'm working towards taking mental health first aid into the creative industry specifically, right. For people to start to learn how to look after creatives better. Yeah.
You just wrote an article in ERB magazine about being a musician and the mental health issues that they have.
Yeah.
And there was something that you said about that. It's like, being a musician is a bit shit.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to get this massive level of acceptance from people, to accept what you've written. Your art is out in the world.
Sure.
And you're on stage and you're doing it in front of people. And what you're really trying to do is get them to accept.
Sure.
And like what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you've been there. You've done that. Your band Kane was put up for flipping Grammys.
Yeah.
Right? So you know what you're doing. You've toured all that. You've done tour management as well.
Yeah.
So presumably you have an understanding of the way the brain works when you're on stage and off.
Yep.
And the downtime is a bad thing, right, for all of us. Do you have a reason for me so I'm an ex-musician, still play sometimes. So what's my reasoning thinking that as a musician I have to be tattooed?
I think we can extend it to creatives. I think creatives, in order to be creative, is we have to have a real understanding of our own emotion.
Right.
And I think a much deeper perspective of our own emotion than a lot of people do. We've got to dig into that, tap into that creativity in order to do what we do. Yeah. And part of that is finding the beauty in shit.
Yeah.
And sticking it on our. People will pay thousands of pounds to put art on the wall. We just decide to put the art on our body so we can take it with us. Yeah. Sometimes it's a personal reason, and as you were talking with Nicky, it's that reminder of whatever that was at that moment. Yeah. Some people, it's just, I really like that band logo, I'm going to stick it on my leg, or I quite like that piece of flash, I'm going to get it. And it's just part of that connection to the creativity that you're able to take with you.
Because what people forget nowadays is there is no flash in my tattoo shop. You come in with an idea, Google's your friend. If you can't find something, look at it. Yeah. And then they bring it in and they go to Talen or me or Miki, and we find a way to make what they want happen.
Sure.
What used to happen is you'd go into Tibbetts in Ware and you'd point at the wall and go, I'll have a number 7, mate.
Yeah.
And then that would be taken down. They'd do the stencil and do that. There was no free hand. There was no, thing. But even then, back when I started with that, I was with quite a well-known biker gang, and did all that. You can't call them biker gangs, but I just did. And I don't give a shit. So when you're in that situation at the beginning, it was just military, musicians, and gangsters, who had tattoos. But the musicianship for me, a lot of it was rebellion. Mm-hmm. So can you pinpoint why you started having tattoos? Personally?
I always wanted tattoos, and at the beginning it was because it was the cool thing to do, and it was part of the you can't be a musician and not be tattooed. And I got my first tattoo that was something that I designed myself when I was 18, 19, and took it into a shop and they copied it and stuck it on me. And then I think as I went along, for me personally, and this isn't necessarily something I think that everyone should have, but all of my tattoos have a personal meaning. All of my tattoos, there's a reason behind it. Yep. And it was a way of me connecting to that creativity. It was a way for me to just remind myself sometimes to not be a dick. Yeah. Or not that works all the time.
No, I can relate
or just
to that.
exactly. Or just reminds me of either trying to be a better person every day, or reminds me of something I've survived or got through, or reminds me of something that just makes me smile.
Yeah. So you survived a huge motorcycle crash.
Yeah.
As well, and that messed you up.
Yeah, big time.
And you were told that you might never play guitar again.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then 1 year later, you were on the flipping stage at Download.
Yeah.
Playing with your band.
Yeah.
Which was Mordecai then.
Yes.
Right. We should probably suggest that we know each other as well, because on Madhouse Tattoo's first birthday party, I asked Mordecai to come down, and Dan and Holly and all of the guys, they were all there, and we had a great time as far as I remember. So that's how we know each other. So there is a link through music. When you're going through something like that, is there a conscious decision to get something tattooed on you that reminds you of how you've come through that? Have you done that? Have you had something that is that a conscious thing?
I'd thought about having it done. So one of the big I broke my joint here in my thumb, and they said that's why I may not be able to play guitar again. I also had some major brain injury.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get something here over the bone, and just never did. And actually, my head tattoo is my reminder of my process from the bike accident. So I was diagnosed with PTSD. It was about 4 years for me to get my brain functioning properly again. Right. My IQ, they measured my IQ a week after the accident, and it was about 62. Okay. Might have been 62 to begin with, I don't know. And it took years for me to process that. I had aphasia for a little bit, so I couldn't, I'd know this was a chair, but I wouldn't know if it was a stool or a pew or a sofa. I just knew that it was a chair. Yeah. And so it took years for me to process that, and one of the big things that affected was my memory and my thought process. Okay. So having a double-headed raven on my head, Hugin and Munir, it's thought and memory. Right. And so that is part of my mental health journey, from the accident.
Did that give you a focus then? So you had these things, and did that help you tune in your thinking? Because you knew, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I've only had this since June, so it's taken 11 years for me to get it.
Right.
And some of that was me being ready to get that done, because it was such head tattoo.
Even I don't have
the worst decision of my life. We did that in one 5.5 hour session, in one go. Okay. So it took me some time to get my head into the process of having such a big tattoo done, but also I needed to make sure that I was mentally healed enough to be able to be okay with having it on my body for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I get that. Does having such a large trauma and coming through it, does that help you understand other people's struggles with mental health? Does it give you is that why you've done what you do?
Not consciously.
No.
I think any shared trauma gives you a real help to understand, but also know that these people understand me. Yeah. So, and trauma is trauma. Lots of different reasons behind trauma. Trauma affects us all in a different way, but I think when you know that someone has been through the shit as well, you almost feel a little bit of a kinship. Yeah. And so it helped me really to be able to be empathetic towards people that are going through shit. Not because I sit there and think, oh, I know how you feel, but because I can understand that going through shit is really shit.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's not the fact that you've been through the same shit.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you have been through something. So there is some middle ground.
Sure.
So, people go through different things. A myriad of different things. There's a message I'll read out in a minute from somebody who's messaged in with their story, and they've obviously been through the mill. I can't relate to anything she's gone through.
Yeah.
But what I can see is the way that tattooing has helped her, because there's a real shadow of grey between her and I.
Right.
Because obviously I've had different traumas, I've done these things, but that middle ground enables me to not go, oh God, Jesus, and think, but also go, do you know what? You've come from there. to here using tattooing as a guide, you know.
Yeah.
You're heavily tattooed. Is there a reason why it took over? Is there a reason why you've got, what, 2 full sleeves, head,
back, some on my legs?
Right.
I think some of it is probably part of an addictive personality.
Yeah.
I hate being tattooed. I hate the healing process.
Yeah.
You know, I'd planned on getting the top of my head done, and I've had the side done, and he still wants to do a touch-up session on the back of my head. No, I hate it. The process of getting tattooed, for me, can almost be a little bit of trauma that takes away from some other trauma.
Right. So distraction.
Bit of a distraction.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the after effect. It's the having something beautiful, having something to take away from that. And I think I'd never planned on being covered, I don't think.
No.
I think it was just something that happened, and the more I got involved in the world and the more I appreciated it, the more I thought, I really like that person's art, I want to wear some.
Yeah. Just
like I would if I want to put some on the wall. There's no difference to me between getting the picture framed on the wall and getting something on my arm, and it's that connection through creativity, for me at least, where I'm more about, I've got to find the right artist for the idea that I want and let them take the creative control over that.
That's the lucky thing about the world we live in tattooing now.
Yeah.
Is there is so much talent.
Yeah.
And also, there's a big thing going through my brain at the moment. I own Madhouse Tattoo, right? We're a tattoo shop in Hertfordshire. Around us, there is other tattoos. There's Electric Punch. There's Nuts Tattoos. There's some other ones in Hertford. All these people are great. Do you know what I mean? And I met Terry, who owns Electric Punch, on a rugby field today while my son was playing and his sons are playing. Shook his hand, said hello. We talked about the realities because we can relate to each other. So that, you know, there is no conflict in all that, and that really annoys me. So, you know, there's no reason for us to dislike each other because we own different shops.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who have that perception. The positive weight of being tattooed for me was that it could cover up what I wanted to cover and make me feel different about myself.
Yeah.
But I never expected to do this.
Sure.
I didn't plan on that.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you now, there are people who come to us and say, I've got no tattoos. I want to start with a small one. But here's my plan.
Yeah.
And they're, you know, full on bodysuit.
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen people come to us for their first and leave us having been covered. And you can take with them their mental health journey with that. Now, I can't, you know, speak for other people, but it's certainly healing for me sometimes. Having these, right, this is sound really stupid. These tattoos, right, on my hands. Yeah. I used to be the most tattooed person in the room, right? Then I wasn't anymore because everyone in the world had it. Sure. And I felt bad about that. Right. In my head, I felt bad about that. So I had my palms tattooed. Now I don't give a shit about that. I love the fact I can look down and go, I got my palms tattooed. I'm an idiot. Look at the state of me. Right? And I love that. Yeah. And that's a huge positive for me. So what are the main positives for you from your tattoos?
I mean, I've got a mixture of memorial tattoos. So this TCB, Taking Care of Business Light and Fast, as Elvis Presley, that was for my nana. That's a memorial for my granddad. Whereas I've got essentially the journey to hell on this arm. And this I'm going to get covered and redone. That's the journey to heaven. And the whole idea of that for me was that what might be heaven for me will be hell for someone else. And it gives me the perspective to understand and try and see things from each person's individual point of view, rather than me going, no, it's not as black and white as that. So it's just different process for different things. It's you know, some of the things, you know, the bottoms of my fingers were, we had a tattoo machine in the house during lockdown. And and
that's what happened.
And that's what happens. You know, they got meaning to me. There's some Viking runes and a TIE fighter and an X-wing.
Of course there are.
But, you know, it's sometimes you doing stupid things like, you know, getting silly tattoos just because you want to, just because it's part of that.
Pressure release, right?
I can do what I want because it's my body. And
that's the thing, right? I'm going to talk to my son Samuel about tattooing later on, right? I said to him about my neck, right? I go to the school playground and I look like somebody nobody wants to talk to.
Sure.
I look like a biker. I look like that person that
Yeah.
you want to avoid. And people do. And that alone makes me smile.
Yeah.
Because I do not give a shit
Yeah.
about any of that.
Yeah,
Also, anyone who meets me and gets to know me through our children around, they're all like, oh, yeah, I don't know.
It's exactly breaking that stereotype.
Yeah.
Looking the way we do, but not being a dick.
Yeah, and I am a dick on occasion, as we all are, right? And I'm freely admit to that. But I am trying my hardest these days to find a positive in everything. So, because it has been pointed out to me that I may have been a bit morose over the years. I may have found a way to wallow in, some kind of misery where there's no need to. I have a wife, I have a child, I have a nice family way, I have a phone ringing. But what the positives now, where you sometimes ignore your life for the positive thing that it is and wallow in the bad, my tattoo sometimes, and the process of being tattooed, is a way of forwarding myself into a better state of mind.
Yeah.
So I find a positive in that.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't be the same for everyone. This is the point I'm trying to make with this whole show.
Sure.
Right? So you've given yourself a duality. You're able to cope with both things, heaven and hell, black and white, because in the middle there's grey.
Yeah.
In the middle there's something that you can relate to. And be it a positive or negative thing, there's always an outcome and a way forward. And I think that's a really positive way to look at it. Not everything in life is gravy and golden.
Sure.
Not everything that you do in life will be ending in a positive result. But if you can control what you have.
Yeah. Also,
how do you feel about this? Somebody gets a tattoo that showcases something that's really negative for them. Can that, get rid of that? What's the word? Exercise that?
Possibly. I think there's a bit of a double-edged sword with that, because that's always going to be a reminder. And in 2 years' time, you might not need or want that reminder. And so I think part of that process of getting a decision, a tattoo of something that's quite traumatic, there's got to be part of that thought process of, this is what I feel right now is right for me, but am I going to feel like it's right? I'm not talking about, I don't like the tattoo 2 years later. It's, do you want that reminder in 2 years' time?
Yeah.
And actually, does that reminder hinder your progress?
Yeah.
And so I think there's got to be a part of that process of making sure that it is the right thing for you. At the same time, who gives a fuck in 2 years' time? You get a blast over if you can't get it covered. So it's a double-edged sword. I think that having something, I got this tattoo not long after my granddad died. He was my hero. He was a bass player in the 70s and 80s, and the reason I got into music was because of him. And it's still quite traumatic. That helps me to feel like he's with me. Yeah. When I'm playing guitar and I see that's got that process. But also sometimes it's a painful reminder that he's no longer there. So it's a real double-edged sword, and I think it's got to be down to, just like tattooing, it's got to be down to the individual person. There is no right or wrong answer, providing you really process that trauma.
You see, that's the point. There's no right or wrong. It is what it is for you personally. This is what a lot of people who don't have tattoos and don't like them or don't understand the process involved in them don't see. That it doesn't have to be a big thing to have a tattoo.
Sure.
It doesn't have to have big meaning, but sometimes to have big meaning in these tattoos is comforting.
Yeah. But
also a painful reminder. Again, duality, same thing. Yeah, good and bad. But also, I know people who have. There's one woman I can think of. She's got a patchwork sleeve of just line work, different things. There's no anything involved in that. She's had these pieces because she liked it and wanted it and did it.
Yeah.
That's the front of what she says. Who's to know what's actually behind it? But she's obviously enamoured by the fact that she is tattooed. Yeah. So if that's the reason behind your tattoo, it's brilliant. If the reason behind your tattoo is that you miss someone and you want to be reminded of them, be that positive or painful, then that too is valid. Yeah. That's the point I think we're all trying to make today, is the fact that whatever pain and suffering you've had doesn't necessarily mean will lead to tattooing. Sure. We happen to be tattooed people who have used it as some kind of crutch, maybe, at some point, but also celebrating art for art's sake. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of stuff on me. You know, I've got my mum. When my mum died, she died quite late. I was 27, something like 28. Mm-hmm. So she died then, and I had that put on there, and I would never get rid of this. You know, my band, celebrating the fact that I was in something that did something. You know, the positives and the negatives. But also, this reminds me that she's dead as well. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not, it's not, oh, it's a memorial for my mum. Yeah, well, no, she's not here anymore. Yeah. And even now, I'm 50, that still feels weird.
Yeah.
What do you mean she's not here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, shit, she's not here.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, my dad, luckily, is still here. He's 85, lives in France, and, you know, done all that. So there's nothing on me for that, for him, because I didn't need it. Mm-hmm. But also, this first tattoo that I had, right, I didn't want anyone to know that I'd had it, because I thought I was going to get in trouble when I was young. And I'll be honest with you, that was the least of my worries then. I'm not being funny, Jesus. So, yeah, I was genuinely worried how my father would perceive what I'd done.
Sure.
And I was wearing jumpers in the summer and like sweating my face off, so I didn't have to show, you know, that I'd got this tattoo. And eventually we were around someone's house having dinner, and I'm sweating in a flipping jumper. And he goes, "Why don't you take the jumper off and show that wonderful tattoo that you've got?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're fucking kidding me. You know?" And he went, "Of course I bloody know." Yeah. And then he didn't give a shit. And he said, "Let me look."
Yeah.
And was interested in it.
Yeah.
Did it hurt?
Yeah.
How long did it take? How much did you pay? And, you know, and all of that. And my perception of him was that he would be negative towards it.
Yeah.
So,
I was the same with my grandparents. You know, I was always worried to show my nana the new tattoos I got, because she would see them and she'd get upset, not because I'd been tattooed, but because of the idea of me being in pain.
Yeah.
But I was always worried because, what are they going to think about? Oh, I've got another tattoo, or I've got my hands tattooed. They're going to think, oh, what have you done? You can never get a job in a court.
Yeah.
And actually she loved them and she appreciated the art, and it's her own perception that's sometimes based on, you know, historical views on tattoos were the sailors, the rebels, the down and outs, whereas now it's actually more common to have tattoos than to not. And so we've got to get our mindset out of the taboo of tattoos and into that mindset of, you know what, this is probably, I would say, one of the most personal creative outlets that you can do. Every other creative outlet, painting, music, writing, you can burn that art. You can never record that song.
It's all external.
It's all external. It all disappears. This is an extension of you. This is, you're putting something on your body that's going to go with you to the grave.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the most expressive ways that you can express yourself.
What, personally expressive ways? Yeah. Something just for you. The other thing is, if you're getting, and I'm going to say this, and it's a gross generalisation, but I strongly believe this. If you're getting tattooed so people look at you and think that will change their perception of you in a positive way, you're wrong. Right? Now, I'm not saying they will look at you and think, oh, that's a great tattoo, or that makes you this. They will think, oh, that's a nice tattoo, or shit, I hate that, or whatever. It doesn't reflect on your actual person. No. It doesn't make a damn bit of difference to anybody.
They're also personal. You could have the best tattoo in the world of something that someone hates, that particular subject. They're going to hate the tattoo. The tattoo is going to be incredible. You know, something I love that Nicky said was that she the reason she got tattooed was, you know, you can hide it all with clothes, but it was about her and how she felt. Yeah. You can put on, you know, I could stick on an Adidas tracksuit now, and you wouldn't be able to tell that I'm a metal musician or whatever. You know, the clothes create the genre, create the sort of the external person you are. Your tattoos are so personal to you, you can't change those. No. And so getting tattooed for yourself, not giving a shit about other people, is one of the best ways to express that, because it's so personal. Yeah.
The time is coming as well where bosses in offices and in the real world, as they like to think of it, is they're going to have to start overlooking the fact that, you know, the tattoos on people do not affect their ability to do any work.
Yeah. Perfect example. I remember seeing an advert that had a doctor. It was just a photo, and he had the doctor in all his whites, and you know, you look at him, oh, he's a professional doctor, and then you see him with a t-shirt on and he's covered in tattoos. Doesn't change the fact that guy has studied for years to be a doctor and knows just as much as someone else. But it's removing that stigma of those tattoos.
It is, yeah, and I think a lot of it is when you're looking at people who have to deal with other people, so salesmen, accountants, people like that. You trust people, like again, like with the doctor. Yeah, if I walked in and my doctor was covered in tattoos, I'd be like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Right, because that's who I am.
Sure.
I get that Doris, age 65, is a little bit like, what the this isn't the way it is. But as those, what's the word? As those generations move on, we're going to get to the stage where there's total acceptance.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? How does that affect who we are? Because there is some rebellion in who we are.
Of course there is.
Because we're all,
But then we're rebelling against that generation where it wasn't accepted.
So what the hell do we do? I'll be dead probably, but what do people like us do when there is?
I mean, there's always I say risk, and I use that word lightly, but there is always the risk that it goes way to the extreme. Could there be in 20 years time the body mods where you're having a limb chopped off and having a robotic arm put on instead? That kind of
where we're going? Yeah.
So there is the extreme side of that. At the same time, I would much rather live in a world that allows me to express myself to the fullest extent than one that either discriminates or suffocates who I am as a creative. And we talk about creatives as if it's the artist. I think you've got to have a creative mindset. Even if you'd sit in a room and go, I'm not a creative, I don't write songs, or I'm not a musician, I'm not an artist. You've got to have a creative mind to go, I would like that art that looks a bit like this, and here's an idea, and I would like to put that. That's part of that.
You've got to create those ideas in your head to facilitate us to do it.
Yeah, so people that wear the art are also creative, and so I think there's that mindset where those creative outlets have to be allowed to be explored, because I think without exploring those creative outlets, it's probably going to have more of an effect on our mental health than otherwise.
That's true enough. Mate, we're going to talk some more in a bit. Thank you very much.
All good.
Right. Blimey. My head's on fire. Holly, it's your turn. Holly is a mental health professional. And I am going to let her tell you who she is.
So I am a psychotherapist, which is a person centered talking therapist. So when somebody comes to me with their problems, we sit and talk about it. I listen to their story and try and keep them in the center of everything, and work through what they want to work through in order to feel happier.
Okay, cool. Blimey.
Yeah.
You're one of them clever lot things. You know what I mean?
I also swear a lot in those sessions.
Don't worry about that. Right. You also, however, are heavily tattooed.
Yes.
With some amazing tattoos. Right. Who did...
Right, hang on. Let me strip off for you here, Jim.
Just strip off, Holly. That's great.
There we go.
Right. So you've got an amazing David Jason on the inside of your bicep.
I do indeed.
Right. I mean, I think it's probably necessary, with you, because you've got the same person did your portraits.
Yes.
Is that right? So you found someone you felt entirely comfortable with.
Yep. Trusted.
Right. Trusted.
Trusted.
That's the word. Mm-hmm. Why did you get tattooed, Holly?
Why not? I think is the biggest question for me. So my tattoo journey started on my back with an idea of through trauma, commemorating my dad. He had a brain hemorrhage when I was 13 and went from a perfectly healthy but very grumpy, angry man to suddenly completely changing.
Right.
Overnight, had his skull cut open, had years of rehabilitation, had to learn to read and write again, and had a scar on the top of his head where summer, wind, rain, scorching heat would wear a beanie.
Right.
So my first tattoo was awful. I had to go and get the tattoo artist out of bed to come and do the session. Massive red flag.
Yeah.
Did I give a shit? No, I was 16.
Doing it anyway. Which is illegal, by the way.
It is. Don't do it. It's bad. And it was a skull with wings and with ivy coming over one side of the skull where the scar was.
Right.
Did that, was awful. Got it covered over with the same concept, and it's now bloody massive.
Okay.
And that was my first tattoo, really similar to you. I hid it for years, until at one point I was hoovering and I bent over and my dad went, "What the fuck is that?" And I was like,
That's for you, Dad.
yeah, it literally was my response, "This is for you." And then he cried and it was fine, and it stemmed from there. And my thing has always been, if I meet an artist that I trust and that I just click with and connect with, then we work from there. I'd say most of mine, all apart from maybe 1, 2, maybe 3, have a deeper meaning, and all kind of stem from some sort of trauma, but coming out of that trauma and recovery. And I think that's one thing that we don't often talk about, is the recovery from that trauma. So for me, my pieces are all the recovery and the reminder that, I mean, my dad passed away, and that's where this one all started. It's all coffee related for him, because our thing was coffee, and that's the coffee mug that me and him used to sit and drink coffee every day. And I literally sat with Brad Comfort at Serpentine Tattoos to do my first memorial tattoo for my dad when he passed away. And I just came with the idea, designed it myself, and he went, "Wouldn't it be fun if we just did a coffee sleeve?" And I went, "Shall we?" And he just, within 30 seconds, was just spewing out ideas of what we could do. And sitting with somebody who was equally as excited as me, sitting there going, "Let's do it." Next month I was booked in. And for that, like every month for, 11, 12 months, we were just going mental. It was ridiculous.
The one of my personal hates, when you go to a tattoo shop, right? Whatever you're getting.
Yeah.
And the response you get is, "Oh yeah, oh whatever."
No.
Do you know what I mean?
I'm out.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
If you walk in here and you want an infinity symbol with a feather on it, right? Okay, with your...
Not judging.
No. The thing is, if you want that and it's important,
do
I
it.
will say this, right? I will say to them, have you arrived at it? What's your reasoning for arriving at this? Do you want this, or do you want us to expand on what's going on? If they say, "I want this," you go, "Brilliant." And then normally, like Mickey or Talen will take that on, and they'll do that with a smile on their face and respect the person's reasoning.
Trust and respect with your artist.
If you haven't found respect from the people that are tattooing you, then go somewhere else. Walk away. That includes here. If I'm ever negative to anyone that comes in here, 1, pick me up on it, and 2, walk out the door. I don't deserve your business.
Equally though, as a tattoo artist, it must be really, I mean, I'm aftercare queen. I will look after my ink because it's on me forever. But I'm sure you guys have experienced people coming in, getting their work done. You see them a couple of months later and you're like, "Did you take a cheese grater to your arm?" Because that aftercare, you've spent hours creating, designing, stencil, like making this piece of art for this client. And if they then don't look after it, that must be heartbreaking. But then as a psychotherapist, my head goes, why? Why did you sit through hours of pain to then actually not then care for it afterwards? What does that say about you? What are you going through in order to not do that? So that's when my kind of...
Does that, just furthering that on, does that mean that, if they're not looking after something, do you think that might be that it wasn't important to them in the first place enough to look after it afterwards? Or was it just the fact that they needed it?
Potentially. I think unless you sit with that person and really unpick that, it's really difficult to say and not make assumptions. I think part of the reason why potentially people get tattoos is it's one of the only pains we're in control of. If I'm in too much pain, I can tap out and it's done. And especially if it's a tattoo that is about trauma. When I'm then getting something tattooed and it hurts too much, the ability for me to say no and stop that person and be in control of that ending, because a lot of trauma stems from not being in control of the result or not being in control of that process. So as somebody who's gone through trauma and is having a tattoo that is potentially about that trauma, the ability to be in control of that and stop it,
do you know what?
That's so powerful.
Do you know what's horrendous about what you just said? I've never fucking thought of that.
I've never tapped out. What does that say about me?
Yeah, but no.
I've tapped out once.
I tell you what I almost did last Wednesday.
Yeah.
Right? There was the last half an hour of my tattoo was, I'd fired Talen 3 times because he was tattooing me, and then reinstated him immediately. But secondly, it was really fucking hurting me. And also, it was then that I thought, because I knew we were doing this show, it was then I thought, why am I doing this?
Right.
Why am I sat on this thing? What's the... Is there... And then I realised, you know why? Because I fucking like having tattoos, and that's it.
For me, as a therapist, I said this to Kels, who did this lead, a bit more on this lead yesterday. It is my one time to stop. I cannot tell you, other than my tattoo sessions, any other time, potentially in the last 5, if not more years, where I've sat still and not moved for longer. Like yesterday was 5 hours, for 5 hours. When else do you do that?
You don't.
Right? So as a therapist, me sitting there, my day job is sitting and listening to, in my day job, children's worries.
Yep.
And looking after their mental health when their world is crumbling around them. When I get home, I've got dinner to cook, I've got a dog to look after, I've got a fucking 20... How old are you? 34?
36.
30.
Good.
30. Mentally 14-year-old man to make sure he's fed and looked after and paying attention to life and what's going on. I'm paying for a way. Like, all of this sort of stuff, life doesn't stop.
No.
Until I sit in that chair.
Right. That's really interesting, because I've thought about that before. I've just thought, I've got 3 hours to sit here and do nothing.
But that's terrifying, because then I'm left alone with my own thoughts.
Yeah. Do you know what I did last time? I've never done this before. Like, my wife has never seen me get tattooed before. I asked her to come in and talk to me, because I knew it was going to be painful.
That's it.
And she
Distract
came in,
me.
and she didn't judge me for the tattoos. She doesn't like tattoos. No, that's not true. She doesn't have any.
Yes.
And it's not her. Right? So she came in and sat and talked to me.
Yeah.
About things. We did a whole marketing plan.
Perfect.
Because apparently we're grown-ups that do marketing plans. Whoa. But, right, and it came out. And in this marketing plan, okay, a lot of my talk was incoherent.
Of course.
Because...
In and amongst swearing, obviously.
Stabbing neck thing. Yep. Right? But out of that came a conversation that we wouldn't have had the time to have.
There we go.
So it's a really good thing to think of.
But like we said, as much as that was really positive for you, for me it's really positive. I sit there, I chat to my artists if I want to, but everyone I've sat with, they know I just breathe. I will breathe through it. We will have a chat. We'll have a giggle. I'll sit and with my back piece, I sat and read a book. I can't think of a time where I have the time, the space and the mental capacity to just sit and read, because I can't move. Unless I tap out, I'm not moving anywhere.
Yeah.
So I can be alone. But when you are dealing with trauma and potentially you're not in the space to have dealt with it long enough to be able to sit there, how terrifying must it be if you're not in the space where you're able to sit on your own?
If you're not at peace.
If you're not at peace with potentially what's happening.
Yeah.
How terrifying is it to be sat on your own with your own thoughts?
So then actually it could be detrimental. Where we find a positive, that could be a huge negative.
Yeah. And
never thought of that.
Thinking about the tattoo artist then, that's a real physical close connection with that client. If that client is going through something in that moment, you're going to massively feel it, because you are literally connected through needle, through person. What are you then left with? Do you guys have any mental health support for being able to sit there? Like you said, you have people come in day after day talking about their trauma. For me as a therapist, I have to have supervision. I have to sit with another therapist qualified in supervising me to ethically be able to work in the best way possible to make sure my clients are okay. You lot don't have that. You have each other. You can sit and debrief with each other over a beer.
I think nowadays, that's what we do. We tend to congregate at the end of the day and have a little conversation about the reality of things. I've been in a situation recently where somebody came in and they needed a tattoo to celebrate their friend, and their friend had passed away. They'd taken her own life. And that person was coming here to be tattooed because they were self-harming. Yeah. But they'd stopped self-harming. Yeah. So there was a link to that, and that really upset me, right? And I'm pretty Teflon. Yeah. And I'm genuinely Teflon because I built up that caught me unawares, because I was like, oh, hold on a minute. So the only thing I did then is I'm quite good at compartmentalising things. So I went into my office, watched something about building a car, right, to completely disjoint him. Had a conversation with Mickey about, okay, that was difficult, and we decided we'd done the right thing.
Perfect.
So that was good, because then we had closure on that situation. Yeah. And I think I'm not one for buzzwords or things I don't really, understand that world. But the way I see it is I needed to step away, I needed to deflect, and then I needed conclusion.
Perfect.
So that was cool. So I did that. I know a lot of tattooists just blank out to people. Yeah. They say, look, I'm not here for that. Yeah. And they build that space. Yeah. And that's great, because they've said they're not being nasty, they're not doing that, but to do the work they do, they have to create that space around them.
Whether it's a physical or a mental space, you can have tattoo artists that say, I'm really sorry, because for me, I can't do that. Yeah. Whether it's a tattoo artist, someone comes in with something especially triggering for them. There was whether a woman comes in or a person comes in, they've had a miscarriage. Yeah. And the tattoo artist you sit with, you don't know if they've gone through one a couple of months before. No. And you're talking about your experience of going through this really traumatic event. That artist is well within their right to say, I love this concept, but I'm not in the place to do that right now. If you want me to do it, can I get in contact with you when I'm ready, when I'm okay to do that? You don't need to share your story as to why, but then it's down to the respect between artist and client to be able to go, do you know what, I'll go somewhere else because I feel like I need that for my own journey right now, or I'll wait, you tell me when.
I'll wait because you can relate. The thing is as well is that I think people do see tattooists as a whole sometimes as like an automaton who just does what they're told
robot
to do, doesn't have feelings, doesn't have that. Also, the other thing is that less and less, I mean, we're on the 5th floor, right? So if you smoke, you're screwed. You have to go downstairs, but Talen still does. So everyone knows when they come that there's going to be a break, it's good, this and that. Tattoo artists, as well as the customers, need to be looked after a little bit.
Massively.
Do you know what I mean? And I do find myself, and it's probably really annoying to them, like asking them if they're okay. It's are you happy with this? Are you doing that? And I think some of that can be selfish, for me, if I'm honest.
But is selfish negative?
Oh Christ!
All right.
Yes and no. Me being selfish for them, I'm at peace knowing they're okay.
Right.
That's selfish.
Is it?
Yeah, because that's my need.
Okay.
For them to be okay. Now the reality is, if they turn around and say no, then we can have a conversation. I'm not that going. No, do you know what? Actually, I only asked it because I'm a dick.
Yeah.
Right. But so we have to understand in this world, and it's something really is that it's opening in front of me now. Yeah. Right. When you get tattooed, the person tattooing you is human too. And we have to be all about customer service because I'm obsessed with that. Yeah. I want people to walk in here smiling, happy, and able to function in this tattooing medium, right? So it's going to hurt you, but it's not going to hurt that much. And we'll make a joke.
And it's going to end.
Yeah. And also, don't pull away. Just say the word stop, we will stop. That's the thing. Put everyone at ease. That little coffee machine down there, right?
Right.
I bought that because I love coffee, right? Okay, so selfish. But also, you want to come in here and talk to me about your tattoo plans. We're going to sit on that sofa, we're going to drink coffee, and we're going to talk about it.
That's it.
Mickey bought tea bags as well because apparently there are people in the world that don't like coffee. Who saw that coming?
Are they real people?
Well, I don't know. Surprising. But so we've looked at both sides of the story. What's your perception? And obviously it's personal theory of people getting tattooed to help with trauma.
I think it's incredible. I think when you really break it down, you're putting yourself through more trauma to recover from trauma. However, I do think there has to be the question why asked by somebody within that process. Whether that is the artist, you just get a vibe off of someone. Why do you want that? Why do you want, you'll know when you need to ask that question. And then it might be that someone goes, oh, actually, my nan really liked flowers. Oh, okay, well, you've asked for a rose. Was that her favourite flower? Oh, no, actually, she really liked lilies. So talk to me about why you're getting a rose then. Oh, I don't know. Okay, should we have a look at a lily then? Yeah. And you tweak that person's idea in order to help them recover. However, if somebody comes in because they think it's going to help, but it's not, and then you're left with this not so much permanent now, but permanent inking of trauma and pain on your body that you've sat and put yourself through when you're mentally not ready to do that. That can be quite damaging. It's like returning to the scene of the crime. Yeah,
there's a question when it's about bereavement. I always there's a thing about bereavement where I always ask, right, how long it's been, right, and they look at me a bit surprised, and I said, I'm not prying into your life, but I need to know this isn't a knee-jerk reaction that you will regret. And I've had tattooists pull me up on it, and I said, you need to fuck off, this is what I do.
Right. Yeah, and in any other industry, you wait. So trauma, especially, I work with a lot of trauma. The general rule of thumb is 6 months.
Yeah.
Because your brain, your chemistry changes when you go through trauma. Your brain isn't settled. The dust needs to settle on your life in order for you to process that trauma and sit with it and just breathe into it. If my dad died and I went in and had a tattoo within 3 weeks, I'm not mentally able to cope with that. I'm probably not even mentally able to sit with that properly. I was still in pieces at that point. If somebody isn't ready to deal with that then, and the general rule of thumb in any other, I mean, you have time off work, you don't really enter into therapy, you shouldn't until 6 months after the trauma, unless it's something you really significantly need. So should that be the same? Yeah, should that be the same with tattoo? Like you said, you're incredible, you're ethically incredible by going, how long's it been? But also, then we get into the nitty gritty of, well, what was the bereavement? So if it's a grandparent, a parent, that's one thing. But then if we say it's a partner, for example, you've got a 25-year-old that walks in and their boyfriend died in a motorbike accident and they want a portrait of them on their arm. Would an artist sit there and go, okay, you're 25. Are you potentially going to have another partner? How is that other partner going to feel about you having your ex's face tattooed on your arm?
Yeah.
And it sounds like a really heartless question in that moment, but it's an ethical question.
The thing is that I think a lot of people don't think that ethics come into what we do, because there's still this shadow overcast on all of us.
Yeah.
That it's bikers, military, gangsters, all of that.
Dirty.
I've been at every one of those things.
Right.
I've been a biker, I've been a gangster, I've been an arsehole, and I was going to join the military, but luckily broke my knee, so I couldn't. Right. None of those have got any fucking reason why I'm so. Right? None of it. Right? But there's still that clouded perception.
Yeah.
And just because that is a bad perception that we see as bad, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And also, so like you said, how's your new partner? Once I'm never going to have another partner because my partner's died. Yeah, mate, you will.
Right.
Sorry, probably.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to meet somebody else. You know, the one thing that
That's
you're
it.
also going to do is weigh that person up against the new one.
That's it.
And you've got this ghost.
Constant, literal ghost.
Right there.
Exactly. A physical representation of that trauma on your body.
I do have conversations that are difficult to have. Mostly because now I'm old enough to do it and cope with it.
Yeah.
For them, even if they can't. I've had one woman just say, fucking how rude is that? Why are you questioning me? And I said, I'll tell you what then, what we'll do is you're angry now, but it's your anger's misguided.
Yeah, misplaced.
So go away and come back in 3 months.
Yeah.
Right? Do me the favour of giving yourself the space.
Yeah.
Well, guess what happened? 3 months later, she came back, shook my hand, said thank you.
That's it.
I don't actually want to be tattooed.
Yeah.
But she came back to tell me that.
And it might only be 1 out of 20 people that do that.
Yeah.
But I would rather be that person that comes back and goes, oh my God, you saved me. Thank you. Thank you for just making me pause. Because we don't pause. In life, we don't pause.
That is it, right? Where you live in a world with Amazon, I want it next day. I want it now.
Immediate gratification.
Right? Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
Right? You can't have that with tattooing.
Yeah.
Right? Unless it is a throwaway piece that you want, and that's great. And there's no trauma, there's no anything behind it. If there is any kind of trauma or any kind of investigative process into it, you need to live with these things.
That's it.
I've spent 20 years of my life telling people to print a picture out, stick it next to their bed, and if they can wake up every day for 3 months, then you're halfway there, and you're doing all that. So, in this world that we live in, I am aware that I'm quite blinkered into a world of tattoo, and it's every day for me.
Yeah.
So, you live in the outside world, dealing with people who are traumatised.
Yeah.
How does that affect your ability to deal with your own trauma? And is that, you don't have to answer anything you're uncomfortable
open
with.
book.
Right. Because you have a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Right? That coffee sleeve, you can't just say that you like the idea, presumably. You know, that was part of it.
Yeah.
That was a bond with your dad, right? And that's a mate.
Yeah.
But how do you put aside other people's traumas? How do you live your own space and your own tattoos and your own world?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I think it's context. So, like I said, I work with kids. And there's a kind of a rule of thumb in therapy where I don't disclose to you because this is about you. If I start talking about my story, it then becomes messy and muddy because I'm now bringing my stuff into the space. However, there can be conversations where if I'm sat with a kid, for example, and an 8-year-old goes,
why have you got a coffee mug on your arm? I've got this one. Again, just a scroll with no name in it. And I used to work with kids, and there was one particular boy that used to come in and work with me. He was really, really angry. And he would come in every session and write his name on my arm. And that was his little bit of
ownership of you.
Ownership, in that moment, he was the centre of my world, because for that hour of me and him sitting and playing together and talking, I never asked him to not do it. It was just a case of he loved colouring in, and at one point he realised that didn't have something in it. It looked like it should do, so he put his name in it. Right. And it became his little ritual. Every time he came into the room, I know right now your whole world revolves around me, so I'm going to put my name in there. And then he knew he would come in every time and his name wouldn't be there, and he took the time to do it. If he said to me, why have you got a coffee mug there? I can go, oh, it's for my dad.
Right.
Because I'm human. Yeah. If he then goes, why? Oh, he passed away, so I've got pictures on my arm to remind me of him every day. Anyway, how's your week been?
Yeah.
And
so
you
answer
open
but
up.
Deflect.
Right, you open up a little bit, because like you said, we're not robots.
No.
And if I shut that kid down and go, never mind that, well, actually, they then go, oh, well, is that something you don't want me to know? So it's having, like you said, with experience, you know the answers. You know how to kind of keep those boundaries safely. I'm not going to go into the fact that I did CPR and I felt his ribs break and there was a burn mark on the carpet from the bloody thingy, and Monsters Inc. fucking paramedics came in. I'm not going to go into that, because no one needs to know that. No. They just need to know that I went through something, I've put it on my arm, how was your week? So I take these as an opportunity to talk about my nan, to talk about my dad, to share that experience with that person if the boundary lets it happen.
Yep.
In those moments when I'm sat there and that client is going through something, this means fuck all.
Yeah.
All right, I don't look like your conventional cardigan therapist. That's okay, because honestly, I probably wouldn't open up to somebody like that. No. But also, if I had a client come in and they hadn't seen a picture of me, I don't have pictures of me on my professional site, nothing. If they sit there and they go, oh shit, well then I'm probably not the right therapist for you.
Yeah.
But maybe give it a go. What's that about? Why are you sat uncomfortably? I've dyed my hair red since I was 9, maybe. Was there a reason for that when I was younger? Potentially. I just really like the colour red, anything like that. But I think it's a visual representation of me as a therapist, of me as a person, that if it doesn't need to come into the room, it doesn't need to.
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's difficult to... Boundaries are the key to everything in life.
Everything.
There are people who come in here who want to be our best friend because of who we are.
Yeah.
Now that may evolve naturally, and you know, I have friends who have come, and Nikki, and and you guys, you have come to the shop, but through, that's my choice, not theirs. Yeah. Because also a lot of time people want to become tattooist friends so they can get free tattoo. Yeah. Sorry people, I'm running a business, not a charity, off you pop.
Well, my artist said yesterday, because I mentioned that I was coming on here and was just getting their opinion on it, and she said the way that she compartmentalises is it's like having a friend for a day, but kind of like a distant friend that you don't really want to give your stuff to or share your stuff with, but in that moment, you've got to spend time with them. There are obviously, she didn't say it, but I can assume there are probably clients that come in that she's like, okay, mentally prepare myself, let's get cracking for the day. But you just have somebody that you share a bit of time with, and then once that tattoo's done, off they go.
Off they go, yeah. Because also, we're quite lucky in the fact that we have a lot of return clients. Yeah. For whatever reason. Obviously it's because we're just fucking good at what we do, right?
And probably that you create the right environment for that. Like fuck would I had one session for the first time I tried my cover up on my back, and the guy I went to see was in Shoreditch, and he made me so uncomfortable. And Dan was even with me, so it wasn't necessarily that I was sat there and he was being flirtatious. There was just something about him that made me feel tiny. And I'm not a tiny person. I'm... No. I can carry myself.
You can deal
from fucking Croydon,
yeah,
right? But there was something about him that made me feel unsafe, and I sat and I thought, "Fuck it, go for it. Just do it. It's not going to last forever." And it is the only tattoo I've tapped out on. And I sat there for about an hour, and when I had blood running down my arse crack. It was horrendous. He was going so deep and so hard, it was like a test of, if you're going to have this, let's fucking have it. And I went, do you know what? No, I'm done. Here's your, I can't remember what I paid him, and went out, and I never contacted him again.
Good.
With an hour's worth of tattoo that looked banging. His colour packing was great, but he felt like an arsehole.
Yeah, and also didn't pay attention to your needs.
Not at all. Didn't stop. Like, for me, my artists know, 5 seconds, give it a breather. 5 seconds, give it just that's how I roll. It was just, it was horrible.
Old school tattooists as well, a lot of them, you know, they don't have the nuances that the newer ones do today. But I mean, the thing that concerns me the most while you're here about tattoo parlours, now a lot of the men tattooists and women tattooists sexualising what they're doing. At no point in any fucking tattoo shop, and I've fired people for it, right? Should there be any ounce of sexualisation to what they're doing?
No.
They're putting their art or your art on your skin, and at no point does your sexuality have anything to do with it.
But also, I mean, I look at every single tattoo I've got and I remember having it done.
Yep.
So if an artist then decides to infiltrate that experience by being flirtatious, saying something inappropriate, I mean, I'm probably one of the most inappropriate people on the fucking planet. My gallows humour is disgusting, but I can read a room. If there was an artist that I sat with that said something that tarnished and tainted that experience for me, I've got to look at that. You've now created trauma on top of trauma, if that is a tattoo that means something.
Yeah.
And that's something that anyone in the art world needs to be aware of. And it sounds a little bit, maybe a little bit arrogant to say, but that's the truth. You're putting something permanent on somebody's body, and that comes with a privilege as a therapist.
Yeah.
As much as someone is paying me to sit with me and talk about their stuff, that is a fucking privilege. To be that person that you come to week after week. Maybe we have a break for a few months, you come back in, you have chosen to sit with me and tell me your deepest, darkest, scariest stuff, or just how your week's been, because you feel like you need to speak to somebody who isn't going to judge you for your stuff.
Yep.
As an artist, you've been trusted with a piece of that person's body permanently.
That's the coup.
Right?
Trust. Because without trust, this can't happen.
Nothing.
What, in your opinion, right, let's do this. Red flags for tattoo clients. Right, I'm a tattoo shop owner. I know what I think are red flags. So you go into a tattoo shop and it's wrong. What are you looking for? What are the flags that both men, women, anyone who are going into a shop for the first time, how do you know when something's wrong?
The first word that came into my head then was feeling.
Yeah.
If I walk into a studio and I feel uncomfortable, out. Intuition,
whatever you want to call it, is the most important thing. Yeah. If you walk in here, you will know whether you're okay to walk through that threshold.
That's it.
And if you're not, get out.
Yeah, exactly. And it might be for what Dan was saying earlier, what's right for one person might be wrong for somebody else.
Absolutely.
And that's okay with neurodiversity, with everything. Everyone has their own different feelings that they connect with and they vibe with. Yeah. And if I could walk into one studio, that's fine for me, but my brother walks in and he goes, no, can't do that. And that's all right, because you know what? There are fucking millions of tattoo studios. If that one makes you feel uncomfortable, you don't even need to explain it.
No,
off you pop.
Yeah, that's the other thing as well. If you don't feel comfortable, don't go through the booking process. Don't investigate in, because one, you're wasting their time because you're not going to show. But two, be honest with yourself. You're not going to show because fuck this place.
That's good enough. If you do go through that, if you feel like you've committed or you're feeling too uncomfortable to pull out, if an artist creates a design that is just not sitting right with you, and you I mean, we're all entitled to go, could you just tweak that? Could you tweak that? Yeah. If we're going so far away from the original plan, there's got to be that union between what the artist wants to create, because I've come to you, because I trust you and your work, and I've looked at your line work, I've looked at how you colour pack, I've looked at everything, and I've chosen to come to you for this piece. But if you're not comfortable with what I've come to you with, and you're like, do you know what? I'm not getting excited for that. I'm not going to be able to represent me properly in that piece of artwork. You're entitled to say no. Yeah. There has to be that unity of a mixture between what the client wants and desires and what the artist feels like they want to put on that person's and represent themselves permanently.
I find that when you are in a situation right, that where we are talking to people about their wants. The main thing that I'm thinking of is portraits.
Yeah.
We don't do portraits.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. You give me a picture of a member of your family you want a portrait of, right? Okay?
Yeah.
Right. You know every nuance of that face.
That's it.
You have seen that face grow from the moment you're born
Yeah.
to whatever the end situation is, right? So if this person has passed away, you know what they look like through, and this photo is every part of that.
Yeah.
Every year,
Yeah.
every mood, everything. Now, I can only give you a copy of that photo.
That's it.
And that photo does not carry all that information.
Yeah.
So if you want to get a portrait, understand this. It's going to be, if they're good enough, a copy of the photo. It's not going to be the person.
Spot.
And portraits worry me. Not, right, you've got portraits of Hercule Poirot and
She's quite good.
Sherlock Holmes, do you know what I mean? And these people, but their portraits are characters.
Exactly.
You can't get that wrong.
No.
Unless you're shit. And you do it badly.
I mean, we've all seen horrendous Marilyn Monroe portraits, for example. The worst face to ever... Because everyone knows her face.
A girl walked in here, okay, and she came for another tattoo, and she said, I had the worst experience. And I'm like, well, what is it, mate? And she went, I went to this shop, right, and they said they could do Marilyn Monroe, and I saw their work, and it's all fantastic. She showed me it.
All right.
It's Margaret fucking Thatcher. Right? I shit you not, it was Margaret Thatcher. The woman was beside herself, right? Okay, luckily, it could be fixed, right? Luckily. Right, but Marilyn Monroe, Margaret Thatcher.
Slightly different. One is massively sexier than the other, and that depends on who you're after.
I mean, oh God, I didn't know what to say. I'm like, and I couldn't say, no, that's Marilyn. No, it's fucking Margaret Thatcher, mate.
Shit.
I grew up looking at Margaret Thatcher on the telly news, going, oh God.
But we all also grew up, like, kind of pining over Marilyn Monroe. Like, we know those faces, so anyone looks at that and you if that eye is slightly downturned or the hair is slightly wrong, you're gonna know it instantly. And no matter how good that artist is, there is, I mean, I think tattoo artist Kells, who does these, she is an absolute wizard. I don't know how she does it. I sit there really still and she comes out with this stuff, but it took her some time to sit and think whether it feels okay to do this, because it's a commitment that she's got to make. I'm going to walk around with this on my arm for the rest of my life, and proudly I chose my wedding dress he's proposed in order to show off my tattoos, because they're me.
They're part of you.
They're part of me. And also my dad and my nan aren't going to be there on my day.
No.
But they are with these. My dad's in my ring, like ashes, not ghostly.
Okay.
But they're here. They're on my arms. They're literally walking next to me. So there is so much meaning behind that. But also, you've got those little random tattoos that mean nothing, that just make you giggle.
Yeah.
But there is so much decision-making process that has to be considered for the client and also the artist. And I think often clients forget. As a client, I sometimes forget. I can come to you as an artist with an idea, but you have the authority to go, I'm not the right one for you.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is as well, is that there is a stage where someone comes in and they go, I want this and I want that and I want this and I want that. And I'll go, well, I'm not doing that.
No.
And they go, what do you mean? I said, right, well, one, you've been with your boyfriend 2.5 weeks and
It's
you want
not
his
okay,
name on
isn't
you.
it?
Right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you what happens when you put somebody's name on you.
Yeah.
Right? Bang, it's done. Because all of a sudden
That's
you've got ownership.
Yeah.
And people perceive that as ownership. Right, there's a story that I tell. And the woman is no longer with us, so I can't offend her.
Yeah.
She came to me in my Hertford store years ago and said, I want my my boyfriend's name across my back, and I want this and vines and all of that.
Right.
And it was huge. And I said, okay, well that's great. Does your husband know? Does your boyfriend know you're here?
Yeah.
He said, no, he's getting out of prison. He's been inside for 5 years.
Okay.
And I went, okay. I said, you need to stop.
Yeah.
Right? This is a knee-jerk reaction to what's happening.
Yeah.
She said, no, I want to celebrate. I said, how long were you together before you went inside? And she said, oh, we were together 2 years, and I'm still with him now. And I said, right, okay, let me explain to you what happens when you come out of prison. You are not the same person. You all right? Yeah? You're not the same person as when you went in. you are not the same character. You're either impaired, or you have a different perception of life, right? So don't. And I said to her then, and I believe me, I know what I'm talking about. So when she insisted on having this tattoo, and it was expensive, right, I said no, and sent her away. I came in the next day. She had come in knowing that I wasn't there. Yeah. And the tattooist there didn't know that I'd said no, didn't know anything about it. And had nothing to do, had a cancellation, booked her in. So I walked in and I just said, okay, look, there's nothing we can do now. Yeah. You do what you do. And then the tattoo was done.
How long did it last?
8 days later, he got out of prison. He then told her that the marriage was over. It didn't stop to take breath. Yeah. There is no. They were boyfriend and girlfriend. The relationship was over. Yeah. He's getting all of his stuff. He realised in prison that he was homosexual and is in a relationship. Yep. Now, I'm not saying that happens all the time in prison, right? That's the reality of that situation. And she then demanded that we covered it up and we did this and we did all this. And I just said, look, this is what I'm saying to you at the beginning. And you've come into my shop and told an artist to do that. Right, and he's done it. He's done it good. It looks great. But now you're left with that. Yeah,
it's like you said. It's the branding of. There is definitely something with names, names and branding and ownership, but also that wider sense of responsibility. You took that ethical responsibility and went, just pause. Yeah. Just take a breather. Have a think about whether that's right.
Let's sit with him in that situation of yours. Yeah. For a while before you decide it. I get where you're going, celebrating the fact he's coming out. Just buy him a flag for fuck's sake.
Right. It's you're making a commitment by having a commitment, like by creating the ultimate commitment, which is inking something permanently on your body. Yeah. And that's great. And often that sense of commitment is forgotten in this whole process as well. I am literally committing my skin to this, unless I want to sit and go through hours of laser, which isn't going to happen. No. I'm committing to this. And also that artist is committing to having their work on my body for the rest of my life. I am a physical representation of Brad and Kels and other artists that I've gone to. And luckily they're really proud of what they've done. Good. But so imagine if... By the way. Right. Yeah. Well done. But imagine if you weren't.
Yeah. Imagine if you're sat there knowing that your piece of crap is out there. Right. Right? It might not look like a piece of crap, but if you're the artist and you think that, how do you live with that?
But linking it back right to the beginning of you and I talking, imagine if you've created something fucking gorgeous. You are so proud of it, and I don't do any aftercare. I go out swimming, I go out in the sun, I go on holiday the day after, I'm in Tenerife, sunning myself up, no sun cream, nothing. And it's just naff.
Patchy crap.
Horrendous.
Yeah, do you know what then happened? Look what you did to me.
Right?
Because the customer, 9 times out of 10, we have had it where the bloke has come in and gone, I fucked it. I've completely dropped the ball. I went to... There was one, I can't remember who it was. Somebody did someone from The Walking Dead. I think it was Dave who used to work here. Right. And it was bloody great. Yeah. And then they went to a festival the next day wearing tight jeans.
Rubbing the whole
ripped the crap out of it. Yeah. So just have a little thought for the tattooist when you're in a situation where you haven't looked after it and you picked it. Yeah. Yes, we'll fix it if we can. Exactly. But understand, we do that for free because we're standing by our work. Yeah. If you don't look after it, why should we care?
That's it. And
obviously we do, but
again, it all comes back to trust, to boundaries, to respect, all of those things. This isn't just sticking some art on the wall, which is wonderful because it's a commitment that you're putting there, but you can take that down, you can chuck it away, you can sell it on, you can give it to someone else.
It's movement.
Exactly.
With this,
it's stationary.
Also, don't see tattoos. There's no escapism from having that tattoo. If you've been tattooed, you can get laser, but talk to the laser specialist. They'll tell you, that black and blue come out. Green, you're screwed. That's in there forever. Yeah. Red as well isn't so great. Yeah. It will fade through. Yeah. So and then you're left with a ghost to it, which means you have to have another tattoo.
That's it.
Which means you then have to be invested again enough to get this done. Yeah. The sad thing about tattooing is because it's become so mainstream now, people don't think before they do it.
That's it.
Case in point, it just popped into my head. There was a guy who wanted a full Catholic sleeve. Okay. Right? Now that's fantastic. We all know that I love religious iconography. I love all that. Yeah. I bought things from
you. Did.
Right? But I asked him, I said,
why?
Why is that? Just out of interest.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, my nan was Catholic. And I said, okay, are you Catholic? No. I said, and then he asked for, and this is not ridiculing him, but it shows the perspective.
Right.
He asked for rosemary beads. Okay? Now, okay, that's quite funny. But I'm not saying that to ridicule him, right? But if you don't know that they're rosary beads, you're having the wrong tattoo, sweetheart. It's all gone horribly wrong in your brain.
Yeah. But also, having that understanding of what you have on your body, especially if it's I can't not wear a t-shirt and you see my arms. So there's got to be an understanding that what goes on my body in places where it can be seen, that is the first thing somebody looks at. If I've got a massive, like we said, sleeve representing Catholicism, the first thing someone's going to look at is that and go, oh, so you're Catholic then. If you then have to go through an entire story, which you might love to do, and go, and actually it's my nan and this and this and this and this, if you haven't thought about what you've got, and actually it could be really quite offensive. I know you won't mind me saying it, Dan, but your first tattoo, the skull, it's not skull, the cross with the flames, stunning tattoo, looks slightly racist. It's not fucking racist, but when you were 18, that wouldn't have been a consideration. But actually, just again, power of the pause, just sitting there and going, what is this going to represent about me? I am more than happy to be represented by the artwork on my body and for someone to make a snap judgment about me the minute they see me. Because either you're going to think, bloody hell, you sat like a trooper, that line work is banging. They're going to have an interesting idea about me, or they're going to think about me negatively. And you know what? That's your story. That's okay.
Yeah, that's your problem. Yeah,
that's your problem.
The other thing with all that is people's perception of you. If you like, and I'm going to say this again, I've said it before. If you're getting tattooed for other people to think something, then move on. Right? Because it's the wrong thing to do. Yeah. Right? And no, I can't tell you what to do. I can't do it. But if you're doing it for somebody else, it's the wrong game. Yeah. So, with the guy with the Catholic thing, I turned around and said, look, mate, you don't, because he was talking Virgin Mary, prayer hands. The whole thing. And I said, you know what? Right, what did your nan love? Right, she was Catholic, so there was Catholic guilt, I imagine, and or she loved Catholicism, and that was her rock. What did she love outside of that? Oh, do you know what? She always grew peonies, and I'm like, holy shit!
Here we go.
Here you go. Yeah. So what he ended up with a shoulder piece with 4 peonies because there were 4 different strands of the family that all linked to her, and I just said, right, so. And I said to him, well, what if we did peonies instead of the whole sleeve? Do you want the whole sleeve? Yeah. He said, well, no, I kind of thought that's what I should do. And I said, right, cool. And well done for your commitment to your nan.
Yeah, love that.
Right? But your memories of your nan will fade, and you don't have that religion. So you're going to want something maybe for yourself one day. So we did that, and he did that. And then he has now a full sleeve of things that he wanted, which turned out to be hot rods and stuff like that.
Amazing.
Which is amazing. Yeah.
You as the professional took the time to have that conversation. If he'd walked into a different shop, maybe someone wouldn't have had that. So then it comes down to, again, shared responsibility. Whose responsibility is it to sit there and go, why? Ask that question, why? Is it the client's responsibility to sit and try and ponder that for themselves? Maybe if they're sat in trauma, maybe they don't have the mental capacity right now to think about why. They just want to sit there and get this done. As the artist, does the responsibility then fall on you? Does it fall on their parents' shoulders by going, nope, you can't have that done? It's got to be a shared responsibility, surely. Yeah.
Is there ever a time where responsibility, how do I frame that question? Say we don't know anything behind it and we take it at face value. Yeah. Are we as tattooists then in the wrong for not questioning every tattoo that comes through the door?
I don't think so, because I think if that client comes to you with something, it is completely on them what they share with you. Just like as a therapist, I can't sit and question everything you tell me. Right. I've got to take what you're saying, and this is your story. What you tell me in that moment absolutely is your truth. I've had many child clients who come in with a complete fabricated story of their world, and yet if I speak to their social worker, I don't disclose anything that child said to me, but their social worker is telling me, offloading and telling me that their life is fucking awful, they've got this, they've gone through this abuse, and actually we're in session 3 and this child's, going walking through the park with Nan every day, and, dad buys him a chippy every Wednesday. Dad's died, Nan's in prison.
So that fantasy world is their coping mechanism.
Right. If they come to you and they share something with you, that is their choice. If they decide, if anyone decides not to share something with you, well, then that's okay. You're dealing, and again, it comes back to boundaries and trust. You can only work with what comes to you.
So you have to wait for their truth to come.
If it ever arrives.
What happens if it doesn't? What, just out of interest,
that's their journey. If I know, often I will sit there, and part of my contracting quite often is, look, I'm a blunt cunt. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to be honest with you. If I say something that pinches and makes you go, ouch, then tell me, because maybe we need to go there. But let's find out what's going on for you.
Are you allowed to trigger?
Sensitively. I as a working on instinct, if I feel like there's an elephant in the room, there is always a sensitive way to go, I really feel like there is something else going on with that. You've just told me this whole story about dad, but we haven't spoken about mum.
Yeah.
Talk to me about mum. And then all of a sudden they go, and often it's about, therapy's like lace. What is said in the room is the fabric.
Yep.
What isn't said in the room is the holes, and it's the holes that sometimes make up the larger picture.
Yep.
So often I will sit there and go, do you know what? We've spent 5 sessions talking about your present life, but we've not, whenever I've kind of gone to childhood, you've deflected. You've gone somewhere else. You've spoken to me about your sister. You've spoken to me about your cousin. You've never brought it back to you. Why do you think that is? And then if they sit there in silence, that's okay. Some people can deal with silence, some people can't.
Yep.
That's down to my professional kind of idea to gauge. But sometimes it is about what's not said. And just sensitively pointing out, I wouldn't say triggering, but pointing out something that often, again, it's down to wording. I might be way off base here, or I might be, completely on the wrong side of the track or walking down the wrong path. But when you said about your boyfriend, like your mannerisms changed, you just sat a little bit differently. Am I picking up on something? And they might go, no. Okay, cool, well then let's carry on. Yeah. If they go, yeah, actually it hit me yesterday, then we can go to there.
Then cause and effect, you can carry on.
That's it.
Amazing. It should be said that I respect entirely what you do. I couldn't put myself in that. Obviously you're trained and you're a professional, and that's great. But also you've got to be the right person to do this.
I think you've got to be slightly fucked up to do it, if I'm honest. You've got to have an element of curiosity about you, but also not be nosy.
Yeah.
And I love being nosy, love a murder mystery, but I can be nosy in my private life.
Yeah.
In that room with that client, also you can sit in front of an abuse survivor, and they might not talk about abuse at all, but there are certain things that you connect with on a certain level that you just sit and you can feel.
Yeah. And
I think sometimes you can be an incredible therapist having not gone through much in your life, and it could just be a natural calling for you. But I do think the therapeutic community is full of misfits and fuck ups.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends in the entire world is a therapist, and he was in prison. As a teenager, he was involved in gang activity and accidentally murdered somebody or killed somebody in a gang situation. And from that, he came out of it, he put himself through uni, and he is one of the most incredible therapists I've ever had the pleasure of being in their presence. And I don't think, and I'm sure he'd agree with me, I don't think he would be as profound as he is without his journey. So, and I think with artists, there is, tortured artists is, the coined phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can be incredible without any trauma, but you know what? The trauma's like the little bit of icing on top that just, you're the sprinkles. The trauma's the sprinkles.
Yeah. Also, it's an old thing, and Dan probably relates to this as well. Like, you never write a song when you're happy, do you really? Right. Do you know what I mean?
If you do, it's a bit shit, isn't it?
Well, then you go, I was good that day, fuck off.
Yeah.
Right, what was the band? Distorted Breed, right? Was the song, like, that band was just because I needed to stay clean.
Right.
So, before, with all the drugs all the life. Yeah. But that band was a group of friends who would keep me clean. So we did that, but I decided to have a dirt rock band, and you write songs about the devil, right, and do all that. Yeah. But then you obviously your life goes in and do all that. The devil's a big like poster boy for all the things wrong with your world. But then you have this situation where I'm not unhappy. I'm not.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm sorted. You know, better than I was last month. But I can't write a song about how fluffy I feel now and everything's beautiful.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's that anger from the past or the twisted nature of my soul at that moment is what gives me the ability to write those lyrics.
And linking it back to tattoos, that is you've got the recovery of it, and then you've got the processing of the trauma. And I think understanding, is this piece of art that you want me to put on your body about recovery?
Yeah.
Is it about representing the trauma? They're very different.
Yeah.
For me, my tattoos are about the recovery of coming through stuff.
Yeah.
However, I've got a tattoo on my leg of a Tabasco sauce bottle that is probably one of my potentially my favourite tattoo, because I was horrendously depressed, suicidal at 23, and was unable to function, completely unable to function. My nan had died. This fucker over here had just broken up with me. And it was awful, and I didn't laugh. I was just a shell. At 4 o'clock in the morning, me and my brother would sit and watch Bitchin' Kitchen on Food Network. Yeah. And she would say, she'd put on this awful...
a Canadian blonde punk woman.
Yes, she'd put on the most awful, like, New Jersey accent.
But
she would say, Tabasco sauce. And I
that made you laugh.
belly laughed. For the first time in months with my brother, and now me and him have both got Tabasco sauce bottles on our legs in exactly the same place, as a representative of, do you know what, you could be really shit, but you did it. Yeah. And that's my recovery. However, it's okay to get a tattoo about your trauma. You just got to ask the question, is that representation, that physical representation that you're going to see every day. If you don't see it because it's on your back, you're going to know it's there. Yeah. Is that going to be all right for you? And just asking that question.
I have a situation where I have a tattoo that is direct. I don't know how to describe it. Okay, I'll tell you the story, right? There is here Joker in the Pack, right? That was done by a motherfucker of a man. He's a nasty fucker, right? We ended up getting to the point where he had threatened to kill me, and we were in a situation where that could have happened. Yeah. It didn't, because I sorted it. But I keep that on me because somebody said to me the other day, or actually probably about 3 years ago, why don't you cover that shit? Why have you got it? And I said, you know what? I don't think about it, but when I do, right, that anger and that situation needed to be bookmarked on me. Yeah. And it's the only one that there is. Yeah. I mean, I've got my dog Sky, she died. Yeah. I mean, you know, so I had that. Yeah. Biscuit is because that was my child's name before he was born. Right. Right? We've done all this other stuff. But this, that was trauma. That situation was awful. And it got to the stage where, you know, there was actual conflict. Yeah.
It sounds like you used it as your fuel, though.
But then now, I don't think about it much, but then when anyone suggests covering it, I'm like, no. Yeah. How do I, I'm going to... Because I think, and this might be a bit misguided, I think that's a part of me. Yeah. That conflict. Absolutely. I am conflict driven sometimes, not so much now. But I was when I was younger. The only way I could get through was forming conflict. Yes. So instead of forming friendships, bang, I wanted conflict. I wanted something tangible. Exactly. Something I could feel. Visceral, maybe the word is. Yeah. Right? But now, I mean, now I've come out of that. Yeah. But I don't want to forget that. Because if I forget that, I may revert to that.
So you having that on your arm is such a powerful reminder of what you don't want to go back to. Yeah. And isn't that fucking powerful that art, putting something on your body, feels like a marker that you put down to go, never again. Yeah. And that for me is the Tabasco sauce bottle. Yeah. That is, I was there, I had the plan. What stopped me was that my brother was going to find me in the bath, and I couldn't put him through that. No. I knew how I was going to end my life at 23. That was it. I couldn't work. I couldn't look after the kids at school. Like, I was not okay. Yeah. And that was it. I couldn't do my job, therefore, and I couldn't look after my dad. I couldn't do anything, therefore I'm a useless human being. There is no point in me being here. I'm done. And it took for me to laugh. Yeah. Yes, and therapy, but to laugh and come out of that. And that Tabasco sauce bottle is the marker that I put down to go in. You are literally in bed, unable to move. You don't know if you've just shit yourself, if you're going to die, you're going to wake yourself up the next morning. You don't want to wake up the next morning. But to look down at my leg every day and see my brother when he's walking around in shorts in the house and see our little Tabasco sauce bottles and go, I came through that. Yeah. bitchin' kitchen got me through that moment.
Mental.
Like,
it's
that's
mental
what
that I know the bloody thing
right,
you're talking about.
That,
so, yeah,
that half an hour session of laughing with Brad, who did it, with my brother, who sat there after me, and I got it at the same time as I got a Bike and Rice and Mars logo.
Right.
Like, just that is the marker that you put down, and that is the power of tattoos when they're done fucking right and they're done by the people that you trust.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a really good thing to say to end as well, because we've talked a lot. Thank you so much for coming.
It's all right.
That's
Thanks for
all
having
kinds
me.
of awesome. Right, well, what we'll do is I'm going to talk to the two tattooists.
Yes.
And then we'll have a bit of a group conversation to end.
Cool.
But listen, thanks a lot to you.
Thanks
and
for having
coming.
me.
That's cool. Mickey, Talen. You alright? I'm tired, man. I'm thinking. Right.
Should we bring both the chairs over? You alright?
Yeah.
Need a break?
No. I'm good. My son is trying to get your attention. Wonderful. Okay, so we are sat in Madhouse Tattoo, where you both work, arguably for me, which is probably detrimental to your mental health, and I apologise for that. But the reason I wanted to talk to you guys is that you're frontline. Mm-hmm. You're the ones that people come to help with their situations, and sometimes you don't know that that's the case.
Not until we get right on the tattoo.
So if somebody comes to you, I'll start with you, right? So somebody comes to you and says, my father died, and it was a while ago, but you know, we want to do something, and you can answer this too because you've just done it. So how does that make you feel, and how do you go about the process?
I mean, for me, I lost my father recently, just last year, so it's quite a personal subject. Yeah. But it's a really nice thing to do for someone to like be able to give them something to remember their father or whoever in their life.
Yeah.
But for me, like, the first thing I want to do is find out like what they represent that person with, like, because it's easy to go, I'm gonna get dad, I'm gonna get a date, I'm gonna get something very like to the point, but to think about something like more artistic, to like think of something that represents them in a more aesthetic way. Yeah. It's a nice thing to do.
It's cool. Well, you recently had some people come in, but the woman, she had a floral design, didn't she?
Yeah, with the handwriting.
The handwriting in the middle.
Yeah,
but this wasn't new, was it?
No.
Her father had died.
I think it'd been about like 9 years, something like that.
How does that make you feel personally when somebody comes to you with that?
Well, I mean, it is an absolute honour to start with that you could be trusted with such an important thing to someone. Like, even taking out the memorial side of things, like being trusted to do any tattoo is an honour. Like, because you are changing someone for life. But when it comes to something that important, it's just like you have to do it right. There is no other way. It has to be right.
If they come to you with a bad idea, okay, I'll ask both of you separately. If they come to you with something you perceive as a bad idea, right? I can't think of a for instance, but they come to you and they want a orange square on them, and you can't see any reason for it. Do you question it?
It's definitely something to talk about, because it might, to me, looking at it, it might just be an orange square, but to them there could be like the bigger story behind it, like loads of different things. And also I really like the type of memorial or like honouring tattoo that is always get someone to ask you about it. So it's like, if you see someone who's got an orange square and you're like, what's that for? Right. It gives you the opportunity to like have a chat about it and like talk about this person who's passed and like relive some memories and stuff.
Cool. Do you feel like you're allowed to ask?
Yeah, I feel like I'm allowed to ask. Like, especially with something, if it was just like an orange square, I'd make sure they know the meaning of it, and like you said, people are gonna ask you questions about it. So I would make sure they know that people are going to ask them questions, because if it is a sensitive subject, you might want to put it in a more hidden place, just so you don't get those questions, so you don't have to relive it over and over and over. But then if it is something like an orange square, which is very like transient, like it's hard to define a meaning. Yeah, exactly. You can make up a meaning for it.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of handwriting.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it, and I get that, and I don't have any issue with that. My problem comes with portraits. Let's talk about that. Right. I talked about it with Holly. Right. If I come to you with my I don't know, whatever, whoever, right, and they're no longer with us, right, you have to do that portrait. How would that make you feel as a human being before you're a tattooist, and then how does it make you feel as a tattooist?
Before you're a tattooist, like,
because you're a human being first,
yeah,
and a tattooist second. How do you react to that?
A portrait's so much pressure.
Yeah,
I'm immediately on the
pressure.
back foot of like, okay, so you want an exact copy of someone from a photo that you've seen them in person for years.
Yeah.
And I've got this little tiny photo that's probably blurry, that's probably not got all the details I need to like convey that.
Yeah, as you said earlier, like we could do, like someone could do an absolutely perfect rendition of a photo, and it can look like that photo, but that photo might not actually look like them in their everyday life.
I think I'm right in saying that when you give somebody a photo of somebody you love, you have a deeper perception than the front picture on the top of this paper that's made out of ink blots, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is you have no idea what the actual relationship to that person is. Yeah, it might be your dad, it might be your mum, it might be whatever, but they might have hated that person and had a different thing, or loved them so much, but they loved one part of it. I remember, right, this is sound really odd, but my mum had these creases in her eyes, in the corner of her eye, right? So when she's doing it, now I know if I give you guys a picture of that, right, you're not going to see that.
No,
you're not
we're
going to even
not
know
picking
that. How do we as industry professionals deal with that situation? Do you know how?
Talking.
Yeah, but then the real reason,